Check this.
Alrighty, hi everybody. We are just trying to do some technical stuff there before we got started. We are here now. It's 4:30. It is Be Encouraged. I don't know. Hold on. Let me bring in my man Tura here. Tura, how are you?
Right. He says he's in.
Okay, I know he's in, but we need him to be able to hear us, right? Uh-oh, he just jumped out. All right, he just jumped out, and so let's kick him from the studio and hope he comes back in nicely. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, Tura, I'll be right. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Zafar, can you hear us, sir?
Hello?
Can you hear us? Maybe he needs to unplug his headphones, dude. And maybe there's a problem with his headphones. What, Tura? All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we are here. There's Zafar. He's live. You hear me now?
So I can hear you. I'm doing two different things. I have my cell phone for video because the laptop wasn't working, and then I have the sound through the laptop. So yeah, I can hear you guys.
You can hear us from the sound through the laptop.
Yep.
But the camera on the lens, okay.
Yes, I can show you what I'm doing, but we're making it work at least. So.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, all right.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry to keep you guys waiting.
That's okay. No problem at all, Zafar. Thank you. Tura, you want to introduce our guest?
Sure. So we're very excited to have on the show Zafar Azam. He's a wonderful community advocate in the Afghan community. He's also with a wonderful mosque in the community. So I thought I'd bring him on our show to talk about what he's doing for the community.
Now, do the different mosques have different names? What mosque is he at?
He is with the Mustafa Center.
Mustafa Center. Okay.
It's a wonderful mosque. I go to it personally, and they've done some amazing things, especially during Ramadan.
Yeah, cool. That's good. We talked to one of the leaders from the mosque, right? Didn't we?
Yep, last week.
Yeah.
From a different mosque, yes.
Oh, I was from a different mosque. Okay, I didn't know. Anyway, Zafar, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I wish I could just come off on my laptop, but like I said, we'll make it work. So it's a good day. As they say, any day above ground is a good day. So
that's what they say, anyway.
Yeah.
I think we're using the mic on the laptop. It sounds like I'm not sure. Yeah.
You guys can hear me good, though, right?
I can hear you. Yeah, you kind of sound like you're in a hole a little bit, but that's fine. It's fine. Okay. We can hear you fine. Nowadays, it's not such a big deal. It used to be. Used to be. They go, "Oh, we can't have him on the air. You can't hardly hear him." No, but we hear you good. No, we hear you really good. Thank you, Tura. I appreciate you, sir. You're a good man. I'll talk to you a little bit later. All right, so Zafar, let's talk. Let me hear what you have. You've been up to some good things. Not no good, but good. Tell me about what good you've been up to.
So I don't know what time frame you would like me to focus on, but yeah, I've been really keeping busy. So for my work, I have my own business, which because of the COVID-19 has gone down, but at the same time, I've been super busy with the community work. So I guess I will start maybe, mid-March from the COVID era.
Sure.
What we've been doing. So as Tura mentioned, I'm actually on the board of directors for Mustafa Center, which is not just a mosque, but it's also a community center for Afghans. They have a school, classes, and programs. Um, so earlier in the year, we're actually building a state-of-the-art funeral facility for the 300,000 strong Muslim population in the area. So I've been really busy with that. It should be due to finish around November. So we've been trying to do a little community fundraising for that. I think the total project cost is a little over $4 million. And for our community, I mean, that's a quite significant amount. But fortunately, we have secured more than half of it.
Good.
So I've been spending time helping the fundraising team for that to, have programs, fundraising programs. We had our own first time ever live Facebook fundraiser because again we couldn't, do like a banquet or anything like that.
Sure.
So I've been doing that. You want me to keep going? Let me know if you.
No, go.
This
This is fascinating. No, go right ahead.
Exactly. So there's I think one or two current funeral facilities, but they're subpar. They're in warehouse buildings in Lowton in the middle of auto shops.
Yeah.
So when it's a grieving and mourning time, and it's tough as it is, and you don't want to have to worry about if your significant other is getting good care and anything like that. So it's been a very much needed project, and that's why we've been able to raise so much because the community came together after knowing the importance of such a facility.
So tell me about give me a little bit of rundown on what they do in the facility. What is the facility used for? Obviously, by the name, it's kind of evident a little bit, but be a little bit more specific about
it's
exactly.
It's called the Mustafa Center Funeral Facility. I guess the main thing is for Muslims when they die, one of the requirements is that the body needs to be washed and then shrouded and prepared for burial.
Right.
So the traditional, I guess, funeral homes, if you can call them, that's what they do. But they don't have any space where the whole family can come for viewing. One of the other criteria is that before you bury your dead, you're supposed to do a prayer. And so oftentimes we do that at the cemetery, and sometimes it's super cold, sometimes it's raining, sometimes the sun is just right on your face.
Right.
So our funeral facility, I forget the exact square footage, but it's a 2-story, fairly large building, and it's directly across Mustafa Center, right at the intersection of Braddock Road and Backwood Road.
Okay.
So what we'll have room for I think 9 bodies to do it simultaneously. We'll have some office space and then some conference room space where an entire family can come and view their dead one before we leave for the cemetery to bury them. And for Afghans, we have a tradition of whenever the whole community finds out about somebody passing away, we pay our respects to the family.
Mm-hmm.
So we say,
sure.
May you stay alive, and may your loved one be granted heaven, and whatever prayer. So that's culturally, and normally we do that at the mosque, but individuals and families will be able to do that in this space going forward.
Sounds awesome. It sounds like very necessary.
It is. It's I'm disappointed that it hasn't been done so far, but I'm also very, very excited that Mustafa Center took on this project, and that in a couple of months, will be a reality.
Now, the traditional funeral homes, they still will prepare the body the way that they're asked to prepare the body. Yes, in other words, they do. Okay, but this is just a little bit more. It's Afghanis taking care of Afghanis.
So it's not just Afghan actually. So
in the Muslim
it's
culture.
a Muslim world. So we have 300 plus thousand Muslim population. So this will be for all Muslims, not just Afghan.
Sure. I guess I can understand.
I guess it's a more dignified way. It will be a little more.
Well, it's culturally more
it's more
authentic.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. No, and I get that. I mean, I understand that. Obviously, the customer service is what funeral homes are all about. Obviously, they want to take care of the families that have lost a loved one, and in most cases, just like with some food service departments, you want to make sure that culturally everything is done correctly.
Exactly.
And that's where that comes in.
And it'll be a little more streamlined. So normally when somebody passes away, they have to contact the mosque regardless to get an imam to do the prayer. And a lot of the community members don't know who to call. So the first place they call is, mosque that, hey, we have a loved one who passed away and, how can we help? Where can we go? So now, with one call, they can call us. And at the same time, now I think we have been in touch with the local cemeteries to get some burial plots as well. So families, again, that goes back to when they're grieving, they don't have time to make calls and, they're in their own state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
But with one call to the Mustafa Center, we'll go ahead and take care of everything.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I guess one last thing in regard to that, we'll also have like a community component where we will have for individuals and families who are unable to pay financially, we'll go ahead and do some cost sharing and take on the costs.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's the way churches work,
Exactly.
as well as mosque and Jewish, temples, and everyone's looking out for their community and looking out for the people in their service area, what they're trying to help and bolster and support. So yeah, you find that across the gamut. I
Exactly.
think,
Yeah,
at least that's been my experience. I've never really.
Exactly. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I think I don't want to say we have been behind in that regard because the Muslim population is a relative new arrival to the country compared to some other,
Sure.
immigrant and faith groups. But like
Sure.
I said, I'm excited that it will finally come to fruition.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say behind either, because you've had funeral homes that are happy to serve and support you in your community, in the Muslim community, and it's not like you have anything that's overtly different than what we do. I know in some faith places, I think the Jewish have to very quickly, within 10 days, have to bury
So with us,
their dead. You know what I mean? So I don't know what it is in
we have
yours,
that, and
but
we have an even more like time constraint.
Okay.
As soon as you can, so you don't even have 10 days. But obviously, if you can't, that's a separate thing. But literally, even the next day, you're encouraged to do it as soon as.
Right. And I'm sure it's called, you get special dispensation when things don't line up the way they can or should.
Yeah.
For instance, we all know up in Canada and Buffalo, New York, and during the winter months, you can't bury anybody because it's solid rock.
Exactly.
So you have to. So there's Muslim community there that I'm sure that just has to go.
So again, with Islam, I think it has rules, but then it also has exceptions.
Of course, because there's nothing else you can do. Yeah.
Exactly. So.
Right. That's because I know you want to bury somebody as soon as you can, but also military. I mean, there's Afghanis who fought in the United States military, and if they want to be buried at Arlington, they're going to have to wait. They can't be buried right away. And so it's same with any other faith group that's buried at Arlington Cemetery. It's a waiting list. There's a waiting time to do it, and I don't know all the details, obviously, but maybe they do make it a little bit more of an exception when it's a faith issue with time constraints. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't know, but I would think that might be, at least I would hope that it would be like that.
Yeah. I mean, the American citizens that are Muslim and they want to, they want to be buried as a soldier or whatever they did to deserve a place in the Arlington Cemetery. They're still Muslim and they still want to follow those rules and whatnot, and all those kind of things. So, well, anyway, that's fantastic. I really want to know. I really want you to be successful in this endeavor. I hope that this is a chance here on Be Encouraged for people to hear and understand. Where would somebody that's out there, Muslim or not, wants to support your program? What would they do, and how would they go about that?
Again, I just play a small role in it, but it is a truly community-led effort. But if they want to support, so Mustafa Center, you can just go on mustafacenter.org. We have all the information on our website. If people just want to, give information to their friends and to their community, or if they want to donate, we have links to donate. Or if they have any questions, we have our number there, and we are fairly easy to reach, and we try to accommodate, any community member that has any need, whether it's on the phone, online, through, our Facebook and Instagram portals.
Yes.
But yeah, there's a variety of ways.
And this is Be Encouraged program. Some people might be saying, well, I mean, you're talking about death. And you know what? For the Muslim community and for the Christian community and the Jewish community, death is not a sad thing for the person who's dying. It's sad for everyone who's around them, their families. Absolutely it is. But for the person going on to a better, another place, which is definitely better, that's a celebration, and
exactly. So this, I mean, it's human nature. Of course, you're gonna grieve and
sure.
mourning, the loss of a loved one. But one of the things that Muslims are supposed to say, the first thing I guess they're supposed to say is, to Him we belong, by Him, God, Allah. And to Him we shall return.
Yes,
so,
it's the same it's in the Bible. So yeah, that's in the Bible too. So yeah, that's
So
that's
every
great.
time I go to the cemetery, and I try to make it, because we say it's sunnah, like it's a good thing. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, he did the same thing. Whether even if it wasn't people that he knew, he would still attend their
Sure.
burial. And so we go there. That's what a lot of the moms say. Although you might feel sad and you're grieving, but you shouldn't, because it was just a temporary life. And
That's right. That's right.
Real,
That's right.
yeah.
So far, thank you so much for coming on Be Encouraged. I have another guest that's waiting in the wings, along with Tora. But I appreciate you coming on. And again, I want to reiterate to anybody who's interested in knowing more about how this works with the funerals and whatnot, and this new funeral facility you guys are saving money for, go to the Mustafa Center.
Yeah.
And is it .org?
I won't take too much of your time, but yeah, so that's just one aspect of it. But besides that, we also really need help, because we're a donation run institution basically. And we actually, to this day, we have not opened back up yet, because we don't want to put our community at risk.
Sure.
So we have zero income. So if anybody is able to, please log on to Mustafa Center and support a local institution.
We'll do it, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much. Have a wonderful afternoon.
All right, take care. Bye. Tora, how are you? That was a good interview. I like Zafar. He's a nice guy. Very nice man.
You forgot to ask him about his food drive that they did.
Well, we talked about the other thing. What can I say?
Right.
We'll have to have him come back on and talk about the food drive. How about that?
So our next guest
is
a wonderful community advocate. She's been making rhubobs, which is an Afghan instrument for pregnant mothers in the area, and I'm very excited to have her on to talk about the work she's doing during COVID-19.
Well, there she is. Hi, Lisa. You have your son. Nope, you're not muted anymore. How are you, Lisa?
Hi. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Tora, very much for the introduction. I appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate that. So, Lisa, how are you?
I'm good. How's it going with you?
I'm good. Tell me about this instrument that you've been building and making and giving out. Tell me, do you have one there?
No, actually, he gave the wrong introduction.
Tell me, Lisa. Tell me what's up.
I am actually a labor doula and child birth education. So
I saw that.
Yeah, so we have our business called Sarabi Doulas, which was founded last year by my mom and I. Okay. And we are a certified labor doula and child birth education business, and we provide non-medical support during the pregnancy, labor, and sometimes the postpartum period of an expected mother, either in person or virtual. So we provide evidence-based informational support, emotional and physical support to mothers during the labor and delivery. And we really help parents to advocate for themselves by teaching them about the hospital routines and policies and procedures. Things they can say no and yes to, which sometimes parents don't know. For example, the use of Pitocin is often used to progress the labor, but most of the time the women don't really need it. And so you have doctors and OBs that kind of push this, which makes the woman kind of be in pain a little bit longer. And then it kind of gets a cascade of interventions where they now need an epidural because they can't handle the pain. With the use of epidural, they cannot move. It really restricts the movement. So we really kind of educate them to know their rights And we also kind of tell them, the difference between having a medicated birth versus a natural birth, natural comfort measures that they can use, how to avoid an episiotomy, for example,
Yeah.
postpartum care, minimizing medical interventions, things like that, that we can really teach them ahead of time so that they would be more prepared for the labor and know what to expect when they get to the hospital.
Yeah. Which is very intimidating. I mean, you go to the hospital, there's so much going on. There's so many people going this way and that way. It's best just to know, what, they know what they're doing. Sit back, relax. And, in some cases, I mean, obviously let me ask you this, as far as childbirth is concerned, culturally speaking, are there things like you mentioned the Pitocin? Is that something you're not supposed to use? Or is that just something that, you're just kind of keeping an eye on to make sure it's not overused?
So Pitocin is a synthetic form of the natural hormone that we have called oxytocin.
Sure.
So naturally, when you go into labor, the oxytocin level is gonna rise. But what's happening is sometimes, let's say if your water breaks, it might take like a couple of hours, even a couple of days for labor to actually start. So if you go to the hospital, sometimes they might say, well, your water broke, for example, but you're not having any contractions. So we're going to give you Pitocin to kind of get the labor going. But what they don't tell you is that actually that decreases your pain tolerance. So you're in pain a lot longer, and then you can't handle the pain. So it makes you have like a really bad birth experience. And so we have a lot of women who get these medical interventions that they don't really need it. And they would have postpartum depression just because they had a really traumatizing birth experience. Where if had they gone natural without the use of Pitocin or epidural, they wouldn't have had it. Most of the time, OBs and midwives don't necessarily tell them the side effects of having these interventions. For example, epidural, if you go to the OB or midwife, they'll tell you, hey, if you want to be more comfortable in labor, you want to not feel pain, why don't you take epidural? But they don't tell you epidural can make you go paralyzed. It can also cause that. It also has lots of side effects. You can have backache and headaches for months or even years after you've had this epidural. And not only that, it really makes it difficult for you to care for your baby, and it reaches the baby within 60 seconds of being administered. So these are things that they don't tell you, and you wind up going home being in a lot of pain. The baby, gets a big dose of this epidural because it's made for the mother. So let's say I'm like 100 pounds, for example. Well, now it's 10 times more the weight of the baby. So the baby is getting this huge amount of epidural. And you also get a really big medical bill afterwards. So naturally, a woman does not need to have the epidural or the Pitocin for say. They can really go about their labor as natural as possible. But I feel like it's become such a business for the midwives and OBs. And if the woman doesn't really know her rights, and if she doesn't really educate herself, she can really put herself in the hands of the medical team, and they can really be taken advantage of. They'll have lots of side effects afterwards. They'll have a big bill afterwards. So we really try to teach them and try to tell them to advocate for themselves. As doula, we cannot advocate for them. But we definitely give them a lot of informational support ahead of time and while they're in labor as well, just so they're more prepared.
Sure. Now, I mean, obviously, my wife, we did Pitocin and epidurals, and we have two beautiful children. And my wife never had any side effects of any kind that we were aware of, anyway. I mean, maybe she did it. We didn't have. She didn't come home in any pain, and she was actually able to stay an extra day both times. Because the kids, well, no, my son was good. My daughter had a little bit of hadn't quite got the jaundice, so she had to stay in a incubator or purple light, blue light, whatever it is, to get just because she had, she's an infant, so she just hadn't developed that completely yet. Both of them were given Pitocin because we brought them after their birth date, but before, we forced the issue because the doctor wanted to make sure the baby doesn't get too big and it's not too painful for the woman. Because in our case, in the first case, what we were told anyway, and maybe this is incorrect, but obviously the first time you give birth to a baby, your body doesn't know how to do that. It hasn't done it before, so it does know how to do it naturally, but your body's not really prepared to give birth because it's never happened. Whereas the second time around sometimes comes a little bit easier and faster because your body understands how to go about doing that, but not always the case, obviously, either. But no, it's really great because there are a lot of things that the doctors and the medical staff doesn't tell you. And I'm a double lung transplant recipient about a year ago. So in that realm as well, there's you have to advocate for yourself. And if you don't advocate for yourself, then for the most part, I trust at least my medical team has always been totally above board. And in my case also, and my wife's case, our insurance took care of everything.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that. And
That's true.
and I respect and understand that. I know that in the process of doing the transplant, there's a huge aspect of fundraising because you don't have the money. But luckily for me, blessed, my insurance took care of everything. So there was no issue for me to have to fundraise and have to gather money together to afford what is a very, very, very expensive procedure. So is childbirth. And because my cousin is an OBGYN, he's a surgeon. So he does C-sections and things like that when there's a complication, or when or he also does the very, very high risk pregnancies. And, there's a million of them. If you're being a doula yourself, there's lots of things that occur that you're not prepared for. It's like, this is.
Yeah, oftentimes the bills do come high, but like you said, if people don't have the insurance, then they have a lot of bills afterwards. The area that I live in Northern Virginia, depending on the hospital bill, depending on the area you live in, the hospital bill can come between like 20 to 30,000, 40,000, even more. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Really depends on the insurance, like you said. Some medical insurances do cover everything, but not all of them. And so you really have to be aware. Just Pitocin would be about 4,000 to 5,000. An OB coming to deliver the baby, which they normally come at the last minute, is about like 5,000. And so the woman is kind of there without any kind of support. She doesn't really know what's going on. So as doulas, we really kind of help them because the nurses, they're not trained in helping a woman while they're in labor. And if the husband is not coached properly, or he doesn't have a childbirth education class, he's not going to really know how to emotionally or physically support his wife during that time. And so we really try to support them as much as we can. So we give them the natural comfort measures, walking, using water, things like that. But otherwise, if they don't really know how to use those, they will be in pain a lot longer. But for the first time moms, the labor is an active labor is between 12 to 24 hours, and for a second time baby, it could be 8 to 10 hours. But it could really depend.
Or both ways, right?
Yeah, it could be like more or less. Really depends on the situation. Lots of things can kind of make the labor either go longer or make it go faster.
Right.
We really try to use different techniques to kind of progress the labor and make it a bit shorter.
And of course, also, as you know, being a doula yourself, there's other doula agencies, and there's also a lot of OBGYNs who have outstanding practices that really support their patients, that are there. I mean, I know that our lady who did my wife's, both of our children, was dynamic and fantastic, and she was there early on in the process. It's usually because they have a lot of clients, and in both times she was there to deliver 2 babies, so she was going back and forth between the 2 rooms, which is also a reason to have the doulas there, because she had to split her time between 2 different deliveries. And obviously there's somebody on call in case both of them come simultaneously. But she was able to deliver both the babies on that day. On both days, I think we had that education. But as you know, I mean, that's why I want people to understand also, though, that while there are a lot of discrepancies in care, there are discrepancies in doula care. You got to make sure you pick the right doulas. You got to make sure you pick the right OBGYN, and you pick the right hospital even to have your baby in. I mean, we had our baby, both our babies we had at Potomac, because that's where we used to live in Woodbridge, and that's where my wife's OBGYN was. And so even though we lived back up here for my son, we still went there for the delivery and the birth, because that's where they worked out of that hospital, and that hospital is just so awesome. They are so good with the delivery and birth and delivery group. So it was really nice, really good stuff. So
Yeah.
I appreciate everything you've had to say. I mean, there's definitely a lot of differences.
Yeah, I feel like birth consumerism is a huge deal. You really need to shop for the right provider and for the right support persons and the right birthing place. You can have a good provider, but go to a birthing place that doesn't necessarily support your choices. For
Right.
example, if you want to go natural and the hospital doesn't really support it, it's going to be making it very difficult. One of the routine things the hospital do is give you an IV. And a lot of women don't really need the IV. You should be allowed to eat and drink, and most women don't know that. So you're glued to an IV, and then the IV, the glucose goes to the baby as well, and it has bad effects for the baby. So lots of times I feel like if you go to a hospital or even not having the right support person, it can really make it difficult. One of the other things that we see as doulas is not is laying the woman on their back when they are pushing. It's really a bad position for the woman to be in. And if you have an OB who's going to come in and say, okay, now it's time for you to push, get on your back, at that time when you're in pain, you're not going to think this is not the right position for me. And so we kind of tell them, maybe we can go to hospital, like kind of shop around so that what hospitals, what kind of policies they have in terms of like what you can do during active labor, what you can do during the pushing stage. And so we want the woman to be able to give birth in whatever position that they feel comfortable in, but also one that will open their pelvis and make the childbirth much easier. And there are ways, but it's just that sometimes ahead of time. OBs they're medically trained in abnormalities. And so they're not necessarily going to tell you, what things you can do while you're in labor. For example, let's say you have your mindset on getting an epidural, where you're not going to know how to use the natural comfort measures outside of that. So while you're waiting for the epidural, it can take 1 or 2 hours for it to even be administered. And then like another 30 hours for it to even take effect. You're in pain and you're not going to know what to do. And so you really need to educate yourself, or we really try to educate them on, okay, what can you do while you're waiting for an epidural, for example? Do you really need an epidural? What are the risks of it? What are the benefits? Can you go without it? And if they don't really know, it's going to be very difficult for them. And the COVID-19 has made it very difficult for women to have a doula present, because now the hospitals are going down to having one support person, which obviously makes sense, because you don't want to spread COVID-19 to other people.
Sure.
It very limits the woman to how many support person they can have.
And they want their mom, right?
Yeah.
Most of the
So
time.
if they have to choose between their mom, their husband, or their doula, most likely they're going to choose their husband. And the husband might not be trained in how can I really comfort my wife? If the labor is stopped, what can I do to progress the labor? If she's in a bad position, what can I do to make her more comfortable? If the baby is in a bad position, what can I do to turn the baby around? And these are things that only a doula can help with. And he might not be able to know what to do. Emotionally, he might be able to help you. But I feel like for me, even my husband didn't really know how to comfort me properly with the first birth. Although he was definitely there for me emotionally. But the second time, he also read a book that it was called Husband Code Childbirth by Dr. Bradley. And it's just an amazing book. And he knew what to do the second time. So I feel like his support was much better the second time, just because he already knew a lot more. He was more informed. So a lot of women, if their husband doesn't have that, it makes it difficult for them during this time if they choose their husband. Or they have other children and they can only have one support person. And at this moment, let's say they don't have a doula, then they go to the hospital alone. We've also seen a rise in the number of C-sections where OBs and midwives would say, mostly OBs, hey, we need to schedule you for a C-section because of the COVID-19. Well, then now they're not really giving them a chance to go and have natural childbirth. So we've seen, a rise of different things, the C-section, and more people actually now opting out to have home birth, where it is much safer to be at home and birth, and you can have your husband and you can have your doula present there, and it's much safer. You're not gonna, be exposed to a lot of the germs and infection stuff that's in the hospital. So you'll be at the comfort of your own home. And so we've seen a rise of the home birth and more midwives being needed. Doulas have also, we've learned to go virtual as well, where before we'd be present. But if, let's say, our client chooses to have their husband, we can now support them virtually. We can be on Zoom with them. We can be on Skype. We can be on call with them and just, support them as much as we can. So it's been a bit difficult for both sides, especially for the women that don't have any kind of support and they're
Yeah.
just alone, and it makes it very scary. And you're alone, and if they have a bad birthing experience, one, they might not want to have other children afterwards, or two, they're very traumatized and they'll most likely have postpartum depression. And so our job is really to help them as much as we can during that time.
Let me ask you a question. This is
Yes.
just something that just occurred to me, and I'm pretty familiar with Muslim culture. I have many friends, and I've taken it upon myself to learn the cultures of various different faith groups and things. It just occurred to me about the hijab.
Right.
Is there a dispensation there when you're giving birth that you don't have to have your hijab on, like with the doctors there? Might be a male doctor, might be a male nurse involved. Is there a dispensation for that? And I don't know why that just occurred to me. I was just wondering. I was just like, I just think that would be kind of difficult to have a hijab while you're trying to give birth,
Yeah, so you could have it on. I had a client who wanted to have it on, but then she had a woman support team. Her OB was a woman, and all the nurses were a woman. So it actually worked out for her. So it didn't really matter whether she had her scarf on or not. But any doctors are considered are okay if you would take off your hijab at that time. It's medically necessary, so it won't be a problem. But outside of the realm of like needing care, then yeah, you would have to have your scarf on.
Yeah. No, it's just something that just occurred to me. I was like, I wonder, and that makes sense, though, that the doctor would have, doctors are different, and nurses, of course, same as doctors, although I haven't seen very many male nurses in labor and delivery. But they're there because it would be dangerous for a male nurse to be in there. It's very dangerous for a father because the wife wants to grab him and say, "Why did you do this to me?"
Well, I've had male OBs deliver my first child, and it's medically necessary. There was no women OBs during that time, and because I went to labor during the morning time, it was only women. During the nighttime, it was males, and we had, at that time we don't have a choice, so it's totally fine during that time. So there's no problem if an OB is male or female and they're delivering you, and it doesn't matter what your hijab on at that time. Yeah, it's okay.
That's what they do.
Of like medically necessary, then you would have to have your hijab on.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, thank you, Lisa, so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and it was some good insight. I really appreciate you giving us the insight. And where would someone go about finding you guys if they were interested in having a doula to help them through their process?
Yeah, so we are called Sarabi Doulas, and you can find us on Facebook. And the reason why we chose that name is because it's my mom and I, and she is actually a midwife, and she had plenty of experience that she brings into our business. So we both got certified recently. So anyone that wants to search and needs a doula during this time, just Facebook Sarabi Doulas, and we do offer financial aid for those that are not able to have a doula but would like to have that kind of support, or we work with your budget. I've had a client who said, I have this amount of money, will you still be able to take me in, because I don't have my husband to support me and I really need someone to advocate for me. So what she was really looking for in terms of support wasn't someone who can really advocate for her. And so we did that. We, said, what, we can work with your budget, and we supported her, and she ended up having a successful VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after having a C-section. And it was just really empowering and amazing. So it's lots of possibilities, but so you can look for Sarabi Doulas, and we'd be happy to work with you and with your budget.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate your time today. Tell your mom hello. Listen, one last question really for you. Is there a difference between a doula and a midwife, or just the name?
Yes. So doulas are not medically trained. We provide non-medical support. We are certified. That means we do have to go training and reading and taking final exams and stuff, but we don't provide medical support.
Okay. But your mom is a midwife also.
She was a midwife.
Okay.
Now here she's a doula.
I
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
But she
All
brings
right.
years of experience from her midwifery.
Oh, of course. I mean,
Uh,
just if you've had a few babies, I think you bring plenty of experience to
That's
the
true.
system. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you coming on
Thank
with us.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lisa Sarabi and Sarabi Doulas. And so we'll
Thank
look
you.
you up on Facebook. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's a lot of information for a day. We learned a lot of stuff, didn't we? We learned both processes, both ends. We put them backwards, though. We had the end of life processes and we had the beginning of life processes after. So I'm going to have to speak to Tora about that. We get those straightened out. So we have the beginning of life in the front and then the end of life. Anyway, that's some really good education there for everybody. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you're on, please do me a favor and hit like or love or whatever you want. You can even hit the angry thing if you don't like what you just saw. But I think everything we saw today was absolutely fantastic and very educational. Don't forget also to like and share. Okay, so just do that for me if you don't mind. Hit that. I'd like to know who's here and who's been hanging out and watching the program. We've had several viewers today, and that's a good thing. Meg, thank you for coming on today also. And Tora, as always, my friend, thank you for your input and your help with everything. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, like and share and or like and just say thank you. And Saberi Fazal, thank you very much for joining us today for our program. God bless you all. And we'll see you on the next show. The next show for Be Encouraged is tomorrow morning at 10:30. And tonight at 8 o'clock, we will have Trivia Extravaganza with the LMB show. And my host, myself, and Bill Knowles will be hosting BK Blaster and Lee Boom Boom Bailey. That's me. And we're going to have a Trivia Extravaganza. It's all 80s tonight, all 80s. So if you know all about the 80s, you might want to even try and get on the show with us because we have a couple spots that we're going to be emptying out with a couple of young guys that are normally in our group, Tora, Derek. So you can slide in if you're one of the old cronies like me and lived through the 80s and enjoyed life through the 80s. Thank you very much. And don't forget to like and share. I appreciate you. This has been Be Encouraged on this wonderful Monday afternoon, rather. We'll see you tomorrow morning in Worsley, or we'll see you tonight for Trivia Extravaganza. Bye now. Take care and love one another.
That it feels right.